how can you not love awesome little boxy cars?
Look, if you know anything about these at all, you already know that the transmission, the CVT, has a terrible reputation and it is completely warranted, but it's not the only problem they have.
It's almost like two people speaking to each other in two completely different languages, and occasionally it makes a little bit of sense, but most of the time it's just complete gibberish. We're guessing you're either thinking, Nissan Cube, what an ugly little pile of crap these things are, or you're thinking, Nissan Cube, what a funky cool little thing these things are. Who's right and who's wrong? Well, guess what? We're going to tell you, because we're about to show you everything that can go wrong with these. We're going to show you how they're aging, what they're like to drive and live with, and we're going to tell you if we think you should buy one or not. But first of all, there's a whole bunch of critical information you do need to know about the Cube, like the fact that you can get this in two different sizes. You can have the shorter wheelbase 5-seater or the longer wheelbase 7-seater, this one, known as the Cube Cubic. Depending on the year and model, you can also have the choice of a 1.4 or 1.5 litre engine powering the front wheels. However, there are also all-wheel drive variants available, although the rear wheels are electronically driven and they're only called upon when the fronts lose traction. But there's a bit of an elephant in the room, because while many of these feature a traditional 4-speed automatic transmission, some of them feature the god-awful Jetco CVT. And my God, don't these things have a terrible reputation, but we'll get more into that when we cover the mechanical what goes wrong stuff. Also, this generation received 3 major revisions during its production run. Plus, thanks to the Cube being built on Nissan Renault's B series platform, it shares a bunch of mechanical components with a host of other Nissan and Renault models. This is why it's not uncommon to see Cubes on the used market featuring engines and transmissions borrowed from other vehicles. Plus, like any good JDM car, you could be choosing between a vast range of different trim specs, plus loads of examples on the used market will feature some sort of modification. For example, our test car here, as you can see, isn't exactly standard. Plus, it's one of the rare Impul models, which means there's a supercharger bolted to the engine. How effective that supercharger is, we'll find out when we drive it. Now, obviously, there's so much more information about the Cube than just this, and if you do need all the specifics, go to ReDriven.com and check out the free Cube cheat sheet. It explains everything, like the fact that chances are, depending on where you're watching this from, these are a great import only. But that then opens up the conversation about what can commonly go wrong with them. Unfortunately, the Cube has been a prime target for having odometers wound back. Not to mention, there have been plenty of dodgy importers over the years that have falsified documents. This is why it is absolutely critical to find out as much about the vehicle's history as you possibly can. Does it come with all of the correct import papers? And make sure you get a full pre-purchase inspection carried out. Also, with so many people buying and modifying these on the tightest of budgets, some of them have just been ruined with shitty mods and poorly repaired accident damage. Actually, this car is the perfect example of that, because before the current owners restored it so beautifully, the previous owners had clearly cut some corners. Actually, just on the current owners, a massive thank you to our mates Marty and Moog for lending us their Cube. Actually, if you want to see the full build process of this car, click the link below, because that will take you to their little YouTube channel. It's called Mighty Car Mods. Also throw them a like and subscribe, because you know they're struggling with only 3.8 million subscribers. Now, aside from the potential modification and repair dramas, these things can suffer a few common issues with the exterior. For example, the central locking can fail on all of the doors over time. Now, to fix this, it might just be as simple as a new battery in the key fob, although there are also reports of the solenoids and the actuators in the actual door lock mechanism failing as well. Interestingly, this sometimes isn't as affordable or easy to repair as you might expect. The hot tip to repair these, though, is just to check out the owners groups and forums, because there are plenty of great tutorials and excellent advice on there. We actually joined a whole bunch of Cube owners groups and forums, and I tell you what an awesome bunch of humans. They're one of the best car owner communities that we've ever found. Okay, next up, thanks to the boxy design, this leading edge is quite susceptible to stone chips, and that means sometimes eventually rust. Check that out. Speaking of rust, look, chances are any Cube you're looking at here in Australia, it's not going to have any rust issues, but this is where making sure all of those import documents are up to scratch, because if the Cube has come from a snowy part of Japan, we read a whole bunch of horror stories that the rust and corrosion can be so bad, it basically writes off the whole car. Again, a pre-purchase inspection is critical, because it'll tell you what's going on deep up underneath. Okay, next up, because this lower part of the rear door is made of plastic, these are really susceptible to breaking. But the issue here is because the car's getting older and it's an import, just finding these parts can be a challenge. Actually, this can be a bit of an issue with the entire exterior of the car. Getting replacement body panels, it's not as simple as just popping down to your local Nissan dealership. Finding these panels for affordable prices, it's getting more and more of a challenge. And then you have just the general age-related issues to expect, things like door rubbers getting a bit tired, headlights getting faded, the paint maybe not being as resilient to 20 years spent in the hot Aussie sun. Not things that are the car's issue as such, but things that, yeah, you can expect. And then one of the big complaints these exteriors get is just how they look. But I'm sorry, if you don't appreciate the looks of a Cube, you're just wrong. Even if you don't like it, you've got to give Nissan some credit for at least taking a hell of a risk. Also, as proof that if you don't like the design of these, you're completely wrong, the Cube has won a whole host of different design awards. Also, fun fact, when new, Nissan offered 12 different front grille designs. Also, if ever there was a car that lends itself so incredibly well to being lowered a little bit and put on some very cool aftermarket rims, it has to be the Cube. Obviously, it helps out that it's just an awesome boxy design. How can you not love awesome little boxy cars? Now, in terms of what to watch out for with the interior, the big concern here actually has to do with the climate control. According to the owners, the standard air conditioning is generally pretty trouble-free. There can be a few little concerns with the heater matrix, but not that common. But the issue with the climate control models is that there's an internal plastic arm that can snap, and if that happens, the temperature is basically left in the temperature it was at before it snapped. Now, apparently there's no easy fix for this. The replacement part and fitting it does get really expensive because the entire dashboard has to come out to access it. Next up, thanks to so much of the interior being made of what seems to be the hardest plastics known to mankind, best case scenario, these interiors can get really rattly because obviously the plastic gets brittle over time. Worst case scenario, things can snap and break off, especially the center cup holders down here. And on this car, yeah, they have snapped and broken off. Now, obviously at this age, the infotainment, the standard infotainment systems are going to absolutely suck. Even some of the replacement units fitted, they're probably well past their use by date these days. But good news here, all of that is easily fixed by just fitting a quality aftermarket head unit. That way you can get Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, even cameras and parking sensors, whatever tech you want can be fitted aftermarket. Actually, just on what stuff you're going to get in terms of features and equipment, with so many different variants of these and so many of them being modified, it's pretty safe to say that each Cube is going to have its own set of unique features. And obviously, the higher up the food chain that you go, the more features that you are going to get. And all of the details for all this stuff, it's all on the cheat sheet. However, when it comes to features and whatnot, we'd possibly recommend getting a car with less features because that might mean that there's less to go wrong. Plus, anything that you do want, as I mentioned before, you can fit it with aftermarket gear. One feature that every Cube does come with are windscreen wipers, but the only way to get the best out of them is by fitting some of the best wiper blades known to mankind, and that's Wipertech blades. Wipertech blades are so easy to order online, they're a breeze to fit, and they work so well that we genuinely use them on all of our cars. And you can get 15% off and free express shipping just by hitting the Wipertech link down there. But look, let's talk about this interior because I, for one, love this design. I love that it's just interesting. So many cars, this car is sort of in a class of its own, but so many cars in this size, they're just boring interiors. There's a genuine sense of occasion in here. The whole design is, it's somehow retro, but it's like an early 2000s idea of what retro thought the future would look like. But right now, I think it works. Also, side note, I feel like maybe Toyota's designers used this as the inspiration for the new interior in the GR Yaris. What do you think? Also, it feels huge in here. Like, you see these cars on the road and they look quite compact, obviously, but sitting in it, there's so much interior space. Actually, we found this on our Honda N-Box and Suzuki Spacia review videos as well. I don't know what other car manufacturers are doing because it feels like there's more space inside than what the exterior dimensions could possibly allow. And not only does it look cool in here, as far as actually using the interior, the practicality is out of control. Here we go. So you've got obviously door bins and you've got a little spot here for, dried flesh and sleep in your eyes and bits of fingernail just there. You've got a little slide out cup holder here, and they are small enough to hold a small pretentious coffee like the ones I love, like an espresso, a ristretto. Little shelf under the steering wheel. Got a spot in this particular one for sunglasses up here. Interestingly, these are the Mighty Car Mods sunglasses. You've got yeah, cigarette lighter and an ashtray. That's to be expected. A little cargo net just here. You've got a spot here for stock cubes just there, as well as a pen and a spot for cards. You've got a little shelf just here. You've got a glove box that I promise didn't just fall apart. As I mentioned before, you've got your cup holders just here, but these ones are snapped. Chances are on the one you're looking at, they're probably going to be snapped as well. Under the armrest, you've got a spot here for ice cubes. Under this seat, yes, a whole third row, you have more storage hiding under here for your organic cheddar cubes. There's also a spot down there that seems to be either for a torch or maybe a marital aid. Then as far as actual comfort goes, seat ergonomics, fantastic. I thought this would be really uncomfortable, but the seats are great. Seating position, really, really good. Not a lot of adjustability, but I don't think you necessarily need it. And then, as I mentioned before, loads of hard plastics everywhere. But it feels, I think, a bit Italian in here with the fabrics and the colors. It's got a bit of an Italian or at least a French flair, because at the time of making this, Nissan and Renault were the same. Renault are obviously French. Also with the hard plastics, you're going to see, with this one, it's got over 200,000 Ks on it, you're going to see some scratchy bits of paint and whatnot, but all of this can be repainted and restored pretty easily. Now in the back seat, I'm exactly 15 centimeters taller than iconic Cube Ice Cube. This is in my driving position. Great, 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 great. Heaps of foot room, good amount of knee room. The seats are super comfortable, plus these are adjustable, like seeing it basically squished, or that is all of the way back. But because the glass house or the windows are so large, again, and the roof is so high, it just feels maybe more spacious than what it is, but this is such a comfortable place to be. And then as far as features and practicality, obviously you get a couple of map pockets back here and door bins that also have bottle holders in them, more spot for life's filth there. In this model, you get a rear occupant entertainment system. I don't think it works, that's understandable. But then under the seat, check this out. More storage here. There's more storage under my seat as well. Brilliant. Also, and I don't know if this is supposed to happen, but you end up with a little table here. I'm assuming this is supposed to latch there, but brittle plastics, they've broken, so it doesn't, but that's cool. Also, nearly forgot, another armrest with two more cup holders. Brilliant. Okay, then in the third row, I'm exactly 0.00015% the length of Cube. This is in my previous, actually it's not in my previous seating position, because if this was in my previous seating position, I'd have to be an amputee to fit back here. You could fit someone in front of me, but it would be a squish for both of us. Also, when the third row is in operation, it means that you have absolutely no boot space whatsoever. This is for kids or amputees only. As far as practicality in the third row goes, you actually get a couple of cup holders either side and a spot that I can only assume is for a bottle of wine to get you through the pain that you're going to feel by sitting back here. Now, as far as actual boot space practicality goes, with the third row in place, this is all the storage place that you get. With the seats down, you get all of this. Interestingly as well, if this car had headrests for the third row, they slot into these little hidey holes here. Ingenious design. But then with everything down, there is so much space in here. In fact, a few owners mentioned that instead of buying small, Volkswagen Caddy style vans, they've bought these and sort of stripped the interior out to be a small delivery van. And yeah, you can see why. This is fantastic. But while we're talking about sensible things, let's talk about safety. But to make this part of the video more interesting, how about we have something of a race between me doing a voiceover of the safety features versus me trying to solve this Rubik's Cube. You can expect 2 front airbags, side airbags were also optional, anti-lock brakes with electronic brake force distribution and brake assist, seat belts with pre-tensioners and load limiters, and child seat fasteners. Okay, when it comes to common complaints and issues with the driving experience, the first big one is just a lack of spice from the engine. And yeah, okay, in this one, with the supercharger turned off, look, it's not dangerously slow, but pulling into traffic, doing say 80 kilometers an hour or trying to overtake at freeway speeds, it requires copious amounts of bravery. Now, to give you an idea of acceleration, 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in a normal Cube takes around about 13 seconds, maybe just a smidge over. A current Suzuki Jimny takes around about 12 seconds. So yeah, a Cube is certainly no performance car. However, with the supercharger turned on, yeah, okay, it's noticeably a little bit quicker. Certainly not pin you to your seat levels of faster or quicker, but even in this spec, it was never really designed to be a fast car. Also, another complaint, and unfortunately this is just inherent of CVT transmissions, besides the concern that this particular CVT is going to have some enormous mechanical tantrum, it just feels like there's a slipping clutch all of the time. Like the throttle response is that of a rubber band. Basically, it feels like the movement that your right foot does has no correlation to what the engine responds with at all. It's almost like two people speaking to each other in two completely different languages, and occasionally it makes a little bit of sense, but most of the time it's just complete gibberish. But then funnily enough, because the vision out of it is unbelievably good, and also the fact that you're basically sitting in an echo chamber of a massive box lined with hard plastics, the sense of speed is so much faster than what it actually is. It feels way faster than you're actually going. Plus, because of the incredible vision out of it, and maybe the smallest turning circle of any car I've ever driven, parking it or negotiating traffic is just a breeze. Granted, once you're up to speed, the steering is so incredibly vague that it feels like the steering wheel has no influence over the direction of the front wheels in any way. But really, this just sort of adds to the excitement. Also, I was expecting the ride to be old BMX levels of harsh, but it's not. It actually rides really well. But then on the flip side of that, because all of the interior plastics rattle at every slight piece of road acne, it sounds like it's got a harsher ride than what it actually does. You hit these little ripples and you go, oh God, that sounds pretty serious. But then through your bum, no, it's pretty comfortable. But what I love most about this driving experience is the fact that even though we're told you've got to buy a Porsche or some fancy badged car to have a car that has a sense of character and occasion, that's complete bullshit. This thing is hilarious to drive. It's got so much charm and personality, and it's super affordable. It's so much fun. You don't need the fancy stuff. Plus, I think this is a cooler driving experience now than what it was 20 years ago when it was new. But you know what? I'm afraid we actually have to rain on the good news parade, because we do have to talk about the mechanical gremlins that these things can suffer from. I can't talk you through that because I'm not a qualified mechanic. But you know who is? It's Jim.
Engine-wise, the CR14 and the later model HR15, they're different engines, but they do share a few of the common problems. They're okay if they've been well serviced, but the problems start when they're neglected. Now, unfortunately, a lot of these are. Lack of servicing in these will definitely increase the chances of you having timing chain issues and oil consumptions, which they are known for. The rest of the engine bay, the water pumps, the coil packs, the AC compressors and the alternators, look, they are pretty much all on par with other vehicles in this category. What is not on par with other cars in this category is transmission failure. The CVTs in these are definitely the weak link. They fail often and catastrophically. Now, it's not just bad design that makes these things fail. Part of the problem here is servicing or lack of. Any manufacturer that describes a transmission as sealed for life and not requiring servicing does not have the interests of the consumer in mind. Maybe the shareholders, but absolutely not the consumer. Now, you can improve the chances of your CVT lasting longer by servicing it at least every 50,000 Ks. Ideally, you should be using genuine Nissan oil and a Nissan filter as well. Now, those items with labour can add up to a few $100, and now that can actually double the cost of a regular service, which isn't cheap. And that's the problem. People just cheap out and don't do it. But I would remind anyone who has one of these that that is cheap compared to the price of a new CVT, which is thousands and often worth more than the value of the car. A good strategy here is just avoid the CVT if you can. Some of these are available with an automatic transmission. That's the one to get. Also, if you're in an area that had these as a manual, that is definitely the one to get. Now, if you can't tell the difference between a CVT and an auto, get your mechanic to check it when you're getting your pre-purchase inspection.
Now, if you are in the market for one of these, currently pricing here in Australia kicks off from around about $3,500 for something honestly pretty bloody dodgy. At the other end of the spectrum, you're going to be looking at about $14,000 for something pretty bloody good. And at this budget, if you want something that offers the Cube's funky sort of vibe, but also immense practicality, there's not a lot else out there that offers what the Cube does. You could argue that the Skoda Yeti, the Kia Soul, or the Toyota Ruckus may nail the quirky yet practical criteria, but the Cube, it's still a bit of an outlier. And if you are in the market for this or really any car, and if you need finance, make sure you hit the Driver link below. Driver exists to get you the very best possible finance package from loads of different lenders. There are no hidden fees, applying is completely free, it takes no time, and it will have no impact on your credit score. But when it comes to actually buying a Cube, look, like any car that populates let's say the fringes of automotive culture, it does really take a enthusiastic and dedicated attitude to justify owning one. This is not a car for the masses. Yeah, it can be a tough little nugget, and chances are it's even quirkier and more enjoyable than what you're expecting. But for a Cube to offer reliability and the peace of mind that it's not going to leave you and your wallet stranded, just avoid the CVT transmissions like the plague. Don't buy anything with a sketchy history unless you're happy to treat it as some sort of a potential project car. And just know that while the Cube might seem to offer excellent value for money, you are going to need a few $1,000s set aside just in case something goes wrong. Or invest some real money into it, like do an engine and transmission swap and modify it to your heart's content, and just do whatever you need to keep this, let's say, automotive art installment on the road, because these things, they can be a really special thing. The thing is though, you could take all of the money required to create the ultimate Cube and just buy one of these instead. But if you weren't to buy one of these or one of these, yeah, what else would you buy? Let us know in the comments. See you next time. Again, a pre-purchase inspection is absolutely the god-awful Jatco CVT, and those things have a featuring engines and transmissions. Okay.